welcome to the A Bit of AI show with your hosts, Henk and Amy.
Hello everyone and welcome to the 14th A Bit of AI show. My name is Henk Boelman. I'm a white male with brown hair, wearing glasses and a dark blue shirt from the global AI community with some fun cartoons on it.
And hi everyone, my name's Amy. I'm a female with long blonde hair and I'm wearing a black dress today. And Henk, I feel like we talked about it in our last episode as well, and it's now becoming like a thing that we need to discuss. Cool t-shirt. It's Global AI Community very soon, isn't it?
Exactly, it is the Global AI on tour next week, where we're going to have 48 hours of sessions. We're going twice around the world.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah, and there will be sessions, there will be like kind of panels, there will be a keynote from the global AI community. So it is going to be really cool. And everyone can see the schedule on tour.globalai.live. Cool. So once again, everyone, welcome to the A Bit of AI show. This show is all about the story from the people behind AI. In our jobs, we meet so many people around the globe virtually last year and realized that there are so many different skill sets involved in creating an AI solution, from pre-sales, recruiting, consultancy, to creating the deep neural network itself and running them in production. So in the show, we invite people from all over the world that are professionals in the AI space to have a chat and talk about what they're doing during the week. So this is the 14th episode, and we couldn't be more excited to start talking to our guest and learn more about what she is doing. In today's show, we have two items. We start with our guest, Quirin, to chat about her life in AI, and finally we dive into the AI Learning Challenge of the week. And as always, all the links and all the information can be found on our website, abitofai.show.
And don't forget, as always, yes, we have the 30-minute show, but join us afterwards for 30 minutes in the A Bit of AI Cafe, where you can join myself, Henk, and Corinne in actually, chatting about other things, asking your questions. We share links, we share screens, all sorts of good stuff. And we have a few regulars, but we're always wanting more people to join us and take part in that conversation. So we hope to see you there. It's a bit of AI-cafe, so aka.ms/a bit of AI-cafe to go straight there after the show.
Cool, so let's get started and ask Corinne to the stage. Hi, Corinne.
Hello. Hi there.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's a nice sunny day out, so that makes me happy.
Good stuff. I was going to say it is. So where are you based, Corinne? Can you share with the rest of our viewers?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yes, I'm based in Amsterdam. So I work with a team in Seattle, in London, and in China. So we're globally connected, which is good, because then you can hand off to each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no, don't worry. Me and Henk understand that. A global team is, the positives always go in, the negatives always going, always Teams messages, right? Always happening.
True.
So it's wonderful and tricky all at the same time. But we're not here to talk necessarily about global teams. We're actually here to ask you lots and lots of questions about what you do in AI. So can you start by telling us who you are and what you're currently doing in AI?
Yes, so I'm Quirin van Waldmeijer. You can call me Q, because that's a lot easier, because my name is French and Dutch combined, so that can be a bit tricky. So I design in the conversational AI team, and my team actually takes care of Bot Framework and our visual design tool, Composer. And I think our main goal and asset is that we really enable developers, but also designers and content writers to create conversational experiences with that framework and our products and services surrounding it, let's say. Yeah.
Wonderful. I was going to say, and for those who are long-time watchers, maybe first-time listeners, I don't know, one of the nice things about this is we've actually already met someone from this team. So we met a program manager on the conversational AI team called Gary Pretty. He also works on Bot Framework Composer and actually connected me and Henk with Kareen, who is nice. Then... obviously, like the main part of this show is to show all those different roles, and immediately he was like, you should speak to her. She's a huge part of the team, the amazing stuff that happens on the team, and all the different roles. So it's amazing to have you here with us and to continue that journey that we're going through here of sort of investigating all these different spaces. One thing that we always ask our guests is, we know that jobs in the tech industry look different daily, including, every 6 months, big changes sort of thing. We're always running in new directions, trying new things. But could you describe to us sort of what does the average day look like in your role? What do you do? What are the main things you focus on?
Well, I think, anyways, a nice connection that you've met Gary already, because I think design and PM work hand in hand, which is great. So I think in the rhythm of the business, whenever we think of a new feature or we want to map out the journey and even maybe the high-level wireframes, and in my team, sometimes the conversation flows, which is a bit different. So it's more systematical design in that sense. You work really closely with PM and obviously a dev lead to kind of go through like what are the technical constraints that we need to consider. But typically that starts kind of with an open mind and based on user input, right? So we have some close partnerships with customers that use our products. And that's, I think, also a great thing about being in design is that you just do a lot of testing and you really want to know how customers use our products and our platform. And by seeing them work and realizing where some of the blockers are or how we can just enable them to do something nicer, quicker, and easier, hopefully. I think that's my main goal as a designer. That kind of goes back into, I think, the relationship we have with these three roles. And that means we often discuss a lot every day. So that's a big chunk of the work. And I think in those meetings, sometimes they can be a little bit more technical, but sometimes they just go back into speccing and brainstorming together. So it goes a bit of both ends. Typically, I think at the start of a project, it's more brainstorming, and then you kind of set out your features and your product in that way. But design typically works a little bit ahead. So once the dev get their setup ready, I go crazy and map out everything. And every other day, we have a chat together to discuss if the design fits our ideal, and that's where teamwork comes back because. Obviously, I'm the designer in a team, but that doesn't mean I mandate how it needs to be done exactly. It's an open discussion because a dev working on a piece in conversation design might have experienced something before where he or she's learned so much that we can incorporate. Just the same goes for the PM. So it's more of an open set, which I really enjoy in my team, that we have that atmosphere and way of working together. But from design, I would say, obviously, syncs, brainstorm, drawing that out, mapping out the conversation. Sometimes I just need to block a day, right? Just to not be disturbed and really focus, because in conversation design, it sometimes goes so deep. It's not just a question and answer mechanism. It's layering and happy routing versus error routing or misunderstanding. And if you switch context, then it can get very confusing. So sometimes you need to lock yourself up and then go through it. So, and it's continuous, and that's what's fun around, I think, conversation design on its own, but also around being a designer, because you you're never, I mean, the product is obviously never finished, but your design is also always, I think, a little bit in concept phase. So you keep on iterating and making it better and testing with actual users, which is a very important step. You don't want to skip in that rhythm. But yeah.
Gosh, I love that. So much variety. Yeah, no, this is exactly what we want to hear, right? Like, and it is jobs in any role just have 1,000 things that we have to do on a daily basis, isn't it? And so it's so interesting to hear those kind of core areas that you focus on. Communication, obviously having to be incredibly strong by the sounds of it. Also loved the piece where you said concentration, like blocking out that time. Oh, I hear you. Like, creativity doesn't happen in a 30-minute slot, does it? Creativity happens as you get really, into a problem sort of thing. And I'm sure a lot of engineers, designers, all sorts of different roles probably are nodding away right now after you said that, being like, yeah, I have to close Outlook. Like, it's just what has to happen. But it's so good to hear about sort of where you are right now and kind of what you're working on. But we always ask our guests a bit about how you got into AI. So can you tell me what your kind of path was to where you are today?
Yes, I think so. I have an industrial design engineering background, which is, I think, more in the realm of physical products. So I created a breakfast bowl, for example, and learned how to pick the plastic that molds best for that purpose, that it's resistant in the washing machine. But I felt that in the years that I was working in that realm, you've seen that the digital element came up, right? So it's now currently often an app and a product, or a more integrated context where they overlap and they have a connection, where I tended to see a lot of, let's say, innovation in the digital part that I personally found very interesting. And from a UX perspective, indeed, it was more focused on, hey, how do you structure your site? How does a user click through an app? What's the best flow for that to get to the end result the quickest? And I feel that that mandate is there. And at one moment, I got really excited around language understanding. So how can a device or a computer understand what we're saying in this context? And maybe when Henk and I switched to Dutch, when I make a joke there, it's very different if I explain it to you later, Amy. So I found that, that intelligence super, super interesting. And I first started with a simple chatbot, trying to see like how does that question and answer mechanism work, and how can design create, let's say, a more multi-turn, smoother experience. And there wasn't a lot around at that moment. I think this was 3-4 years ago. It was really new. So I taught myself. I read some books. That's kind of how you get into it, and then you learn from others, of course, and you kind of grow in that expertise. But still, it surprises me every day. I learn so much, because it's not just the design and the structure; it's the models that support it. It's the intelligence that surrounds the context, that does that correct switching of, hey, when you're inside of a car and you step out, does the voice assistant continue understanding the context when you're talking to him or her on the phone? Like, what happens then? So it's the grand picture, which is super exciting as a designer, because every time you can go back in and think, hey, all right, what if you start there and you end up there? What happens? What are all the mismatches, or how can we make that smoother? Which is why I really like my job, to be honest.
Yeah, and conversations are so complex, right? The way we interact as humans is really, I know probably natural language more from the modeling side, the data modeling, and understanding how complex it is there, and so many nuances, and has sarcasm even relates to things like natural language processing and like computers understanding sarcasm. But there's so much more going on in our facial expressions, etc., that mean that we interpret things and continue a conversation. And so to then hear that experience, like you said, if you're start by sitting in one place and then you move around the house, or you're in and out of the car, and we expect that experience almost now within technology. I think we expect so much more from technology than ever before. And so it's so interesting hearing all those different nuances that you have to design. It's really fascinating.
And I think, so we often, like, even at Microsoft, we look a lot at the tech side, but we realize that it's the structure or the culture surrounding it, right? So language in that sense is so interesting because, of course, it's culturally different, but even when we look at voice agents, the way we respond to certain voices and how high-pitched or low-pitched they are, or how we listen to that comfortably, is different. So in Asia, it's often a bit more high-pitched than where the region we're at. So there's so many layers to create that ultimate, let's say, voice experience. That's comfortable to listen to and can handle your questions, which is of course a technical bit, but there's just so much surrounding it, which is, it's just, I mean, that makes it interesting as well. It's not easy. That's definitely maybe the answer for it. Yeah.
It's not easy.
Oh, that is so cool. Maybe did you ever design a voice bot?
Not
Amy.
a voice.
Yeah.
A voice bot. No, I haven't. I've always done text so far. Gary will be shaking his fist at the screen right now, like I should be probably testing out speech pieces. But no, I haven't made a speech one yet. But digging back to what Corinne said about when she built the cereal bowl. I actually did nowhere near as, like, I was at school and did what we call product design, and I redesigned a cat bowl. Sounds trivial. There was a lot going on there. I solved so many problems and annoyed my cat, like, intensely, all at the same time. So there we go. I think there's definitely a trait that is very similar between, say, a computer scientist and a designer. That problem-solving mentality is just so present after we were kind of having our conversation previously. So really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what makes teamwork also nice, that you have a little bit of that same tick in you, but you sometimes look at the context differently. So it's just very valuable to have those perspectives in. That makes it stronger in the end. But good to know, couple.
Oh, don't even. Maybe I should revisit that. Maybe it's time. Maybe that's my startup idea. Who knows?
So cool. That brings us to another question. We heard now about how you got into AI, what you're actually doing, but that can't be all fun. So I want to know what your most annoying thing is about your role.
Well, I think one point is that you're always in the middle and sometimes the glue, because you often conceptualized it. So it's the let's say the structure or the visual bits that people look at. So you're always in that you own it bit, which means that if a PM needs something to change, you need to check it with the dev lead, and then it goes back, and then, hey, but we didn't test it with users. Oh, let's do a test. And then you go back with, hey, that wasn't maybe the best idea. Maybe we should go back. And in a way, that's good, but sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming and a bit just, oh yeah, I forgot this little bit. Why didn't I think of it? I need to go back and check all the boxes again with everybody and then go back. But that's what makes it a coherent, let's say, experience, because all the roles have a say in it. And I think I just thought of another one. I think in this voice realm or let's say chatbot realm, sometimes it's also quite annoying once you've created good design and then you realize there's still some dead ends that you haven't thought about. Or when people, for example, drive through a tunnel on their car, like what will the auto response be that we have ready when we can't submit something through? Just like when you go through a tunnel with the radio, right? It just zips out. Like, what do we do? Things like that. And you're like, oh, I should have thought of that. I think as a designer, you're critiquing yourself on the you've really thought through the workflow in every level, which obviously you can't. That's why you need to test it so well. But those are little bits that you're like, oh, should have seen that coming.
Yeah, no, the variety of where and when we use technology, and even I guess like we build apps, services, conversational agents, etc., in the way that as a team we think people use them. And like you said, I bet when it goes to user testing, it's then like, oh, that's not how some people saw the usage of it. They actually used it in an incredibly different way. That must be quite interesting to see how people use all the different technology and where they get to a dead end. Yeah, fascinating. Really, really cool stuff. Wonderful. Well, Corinne, we know you. I think you've watched some of our shows in the past. You mentioned, and we have a quick fire round of questions.
Oh yeah.
And so, what we would love to do is ask you our quick fire questions. We ask them to every single guest. There are 6 questions. Myself and Henk will alternate between the questions. And the only thing we ask of you is, can you keep your answers sort of to a sentence or 2 in most cases, so that we can kind of get through them. And then what we'll do is we'll work through anything at the end as well, and kind of discuss further if there's any unusual pieces. We get different answers for everything. There is no right or wrong answer to these questions, which is even better. So, Corinne, are you ready?
I'm not sure. Am I?
No.
Okay, I'm ready.
Well,
I'm ready.
The show is counting down. Even if you're not ready, we're going to have to do it. So let's get started. So I'll start with the first question. Maybe we'll start with quite a normal one. So what was your first programming language?
Ooh. Well, I mean, as a designer, I don't typically code. So I mean, I played around, but that's not my. I think in university, I used MATLAB, which was good.
MATLAB, love that. Yeah. We've all been there. We've all been there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Do you have that conversation with your data scientist? Do you like talk about MATLAB together? I love that. You should do if you don't. That'll be a way to bond as well. Wonderful.
I remember
wonderful,
it was really restricted and easy. That's the one thing I remember.
Fab.
Oh, perfect. So what programming language was used in the last project you worked on?
Well, I mean, so I really don't program because we have great devs that take care of that. So I'm not going to answer it for them. I mean, I use Figma, which is a design tool that gives me a lot of flexibility to work out those conversation flows on one end. And on the other end, we have another product called Composer, which has, it's really a wireframed product. So that's where the true design work comes in with prototyping and making click-through models of your, let's say, ideas of a new feature inside of that product. So Figma is really the go-to we all use in my team, which is very great because it's so flexible. But it's probably a different answer you've had before.
Yes,
Yeah.
No, we love that, right? Yeah, whatever tools we use to do our job, isn't it, in some senses? So I love that spin on that on that question. Okay, so the next one, what was the last thing you learned in AI? So I can imagine for you, it's probably less on that technical side and maybe more on the sort of the area of AI. What was the last thing you kind of learned about AI?
Well, the last thing I learned from another research team internally is around testing scenarios. So that's let's say human AI, a research team that's created a click-through model where you can create test scenarios for your conversational agent, which is really great because you can specify, like, is it speech only, text only, and the the depth of your conversational assistant, where the test scenarios just pop out, which is the hard bit sometimes with testing your conversational agent. It's not so straightforward and standardized. So that I think I'm going to use that a lot. I was just doing some research around it. So we're playing around with it in my team right now. So it's good to learn something from a fellow research team. Yeah.
Cool. What is your favorite event on the AI calendar? But it can also be a general event.
I think, there are design events that I like. There are women in tech events that I enjoy attending, just to see like fellow women in this field. Because we're not alone in this. Sometimes that might feel that way. Amy knows what I'm talking about. And for me, the Microsoft event I really enjoy is still Build, because that's where I see devs. Well, it used to be physically present, right? So devs would come up and ask questions personally, and you would get the feeling of how people use your product just on the floor. But even virtually, it's been really great to see all the responses and the one-on-one consultations we've had. And of course, for my group, it's we launched a new version of Composer with some designs in there that my design team has made. So that's always exciting to see people use your products and listen to the latest. So yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, last two questions. What area of AI is on your list to skill up on next? So is there anything you've been looking at that you're looking to spend a bit more time on?
Yes, I think what I want to spend a little bit more time on is adaptive cards. That's been used in chatbots a lot, but also in hybrid bots. So hybrid bot or agent is a voice agent that has a minimal UI that supports it. And we have these great set of adaptive cards that render really nicely in it. But how much information do you show, or what do we recommend in that realm to include from our conversational AI team? So we're working on that and just learning a lot from other teams that are leveraging that. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Last question. What training framework did you use last?
Also, I think that's a little more of a technical question for my role. But what I would recommend is, in Composer, we set out some templates that are of quality and show the best guideline on how to design a conversation for a chatbot or a virtual agent. So it really shows, for example, for a calendar bot, how you should structure that, how you can link it with the graph, with OAuth, how that whole complexity is. Like, if you look at it from top to bottom, it would be foop, but we've split it up in really nice bits that you can actually deep dive in and see the relation there, which is a great training on its own, just by seeing the structure and the logic there, I think would help. And there are many templates you can pick from, simple ones with Q&A aligned within it. So anyone can get started with that. Yeah.
I love that answer. You picked up on framework. That is obviously, normally we would hear something like, from a data scientist, we'd hear like TensorFlow or PyTorch or something like that. But it's fascinating because everyone uses frameworks, or frameworks tend to be as kind of like helpers, isn't it? Things that get you to completion quicker. And so that's such a good way to think about it. Well, Corinne, you survived the quickfire round. Thank you so much for your time today. You did a wonderful job, really, really amazing job. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and to talk about another side of AI that we haven't been covering, and maybe is not the first thing that comes to mind, but could be someone's dream job out there. So thank you so much for sharing what you do and who you are with us. And as I said, if people want to chat with Corinne, join us in the cafe straight after the stream for 30 minutes where you can ask a few more questions about really anything that we've covered here. And with that, Kareem, we'll say goodbye to you whilst we wrap up the show. But thank you so much.
I mean, thank you, Henk and Amy. I really enjoyed this and shining a little bit of light on design roles. That's really, really great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right.
Fabulous.
Right.
All right.
Bye.
See you in a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool, that brings us to the end of the show already. Only one more show left this season. So also only
how
one
did
more.
that happen?
It went fast. 15 weeks go fast. So we're just left with our Learn modules of the week. What did you pick?
I have gone for Bot Framework again. Why wouldn't I? Corinne works with Gary. There's lots and lots of great stuff in Microsoft Learn about Composer, as well as Bot Framework, as well as design guidelines, etc. So we have a conversational AI approach. So we've got Create a Bot using the Bot Framework Composer and discover the Microsoft guidelines for responsible conversational AI development. So do get in there, do go learn about it. These are things that Gary and Corinne in their day-to-day job will be using. They're definitely skills if you're building chatbots that you'll want to have a good read over and make sure you're designing the best experience for your customers. And with that, I guess we close out the show. So we only have one show left in the season. So join us next Thursday, same time, same place as always, to see our final guest for the season. And then we hope we'll be back later on in the year with our season 2. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Do come and join us in the cafe at aka.ms/abitofai-cafe. If you want to rewatch this episode or any of the ones previously, such as Gary's episode, which connects really well with this one, go to abitofai.show. And that's all from us. Thanks so much for watching. This has been a Bit of AI Show with Henk and Amy. We'll see you soon.